has taken a payment for the M140i. Yes, it has been sold, but there is good news on the horizon. I will be getting another car, which I want to share with you today. We will be saying farewell to the M140i. We definitely had a lot of fun. If you have been following the channel, we've done a lot to this car, and it definitely will be sad to see it go, but after you find out what car I'll be getting next, I think the disappointment will fade very, very quickly. So stay tuned and let's get to it. Peace. So let's get into why the M140i is sold. The M140i, to be honest, was always an in-between car. So just before I bought that car, I did look at an M2 F87 competition. The car was listed at $88,000, which at the time was a very good price. It only had 33,000 Ks, had an Akrapovic exhaust. And had some interior goodies as well. So I really, at this stage, looking back, I probably should have bought that car. Shortly after I decided not to buy it, I bought the M140i, and that car, the F87, went from about an $88,000 car to about $105,000. So it skyrocketed in value pretty much overnight when COVID hit. And then my M140i, I was fortunate enough to buy for $50,000 prior to the price increase, because that car went to about $60,000. But the M140i was always purchased as an in-between car. I definitely had a lot of fun with it, that B58 engine and the low-end torque, and the way that it just gets up and goes is like no other car I've actually owned. The only downside, no LSD, very twitchy through corners, and if you do start to make more power, the chassis can struggle a little bit in my opinion, but definitely had a hell of a lot of fun roll racing that car.
They ask you how you are.
Took it to the track and sold that car, and it was still mint. It had no problems, had no dramas at all. It is a car that I will certainly miss, but it was always purchased with the intent to buy an M2. The F87, I didn't buy that competition. Main reason was because of funds. I would have been stretched a little bit financially, put me under a little bit of pressure. So I thought to myself, hey, why not M140i, 4 doors, convenient, can drive it to the shops, no one's gonna look at it, and still gets up and goes and can compete with the best of them. So the M140i unfortunately has gone, but as you saw in the thumbnail and probably in the title of this video, the M2 G87 is on its way. I waited very, very patiently for the M2 to drop. I still owned the M140i, and the M2 G87 dropped with, as we all know, the leaked photos in the Zandvoort blue. And when those photos leaked, I think it's fair to say the entire world stopped. Those photos of the rear were pretty bad. I mean, to the point where I even made a TikTok video about how bad it was.
What the f is this piece of shit?
And this is coming from a BMW fanboy. I waited so long, I made so many sacrifices and bought that M140i to wait for the new M2, and then it finally gets released, and this is what I'm looking at. I actually even considered buying a Toyota Supra. But we all know what happened with the Toyota Supra. The front end on that thing, I just can't get over. Now, I'm coming from a JDM background. I had Toyota Supras, I had Celica Supras, I had Nissan Silvias, I had the lot. And when that Toyota Supra got announced, I was so excited, and again, was let down dramatically when I saw the photos of it. So I'm at a crossroads at the moment where I've owned the M140i, I could buy a Supra, I could buy the new M2 G87, or I could actually go back to the F87 competition and buy one of those. Main reason for not buying the Supra is the front end. I can't handle the front end. I actually like the back end, and the tech and the inside of the Supra, in my opinion, is a bit dated. There is no back seats whatsoever. Still a very capable car, but if I'm going to buy a Toyota Supra, I'm going from an M140i that has the B58 engine into another more expensive car of about $40,000 extra with pretty much the same engine. So I just could not justify going to a Supra. Then I've got the G87 where we've got this horrendous back end. I'm thinking to myself, do I just stay with the M140i at this stage, or do I go back to an F87? So I actually went there. The only issue that I have personally with the F87 is that the interior is identical pretty much to the M140i. So I'm going to be sitting in a cabin where, you know, I've been sitting for the last year or two, and I'm going to buy and spend almost an extra $50,000. And yes, it is an M2 F87, but I'm going to go into a car that I'm sitting in and it feels identical, you know, with the surroundings, not so much the drivability, obviously. So that was the big problem with going to the F87. The G87 pictures dropped, the new photos started to drop of the front end, and I'm thinking, my goodness me, what have BMW done? They seem to do this frequently. They get everyone talking about the new designs. It happened with the G80, you know, the M3 and the M4. I thought to myself, hang on, maybe that it's just a little bit different and it's going to be okay when it drops, just like the M3 and M4 did. When I saw the bucktooth M3, I thought, my goodness, you know, BMW have actually lost the plot here. When I saw it on the road, my perspective of that car completely changed. So I'm thinking, hang on a minute, this could happen with the G87, so let's just slow down a little bit and give it a chance. Now, at this stage, I went into the BMW dealership and I put down a deposit to secure my spot, you know, as soon as possible for this car. And I think that was, around October. You know, more photos and more information started to come to light. I decided to put a bigger deposit. I had to make a decision, I think it was back in November. I should put video in this.
I am. Oh. You are serious with YouTube, yeah? This is serious. Oh, shit, I'm swearing.
That's right.
No, we blank out.
Do you do big beeps?
Yeah. We do quacks.
No, are you serious? Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What?
As to whether or not I really wanted this car, it's a couple of $1,000s I had to put down. So I remember walking into the dealership and discussing it with him. He goes, no, trust me, this car is going to look good. It's going to look good. I'm thinking to myself, yeah, okay. Everything that I've seen is pointing towards it's not going to look good. I thought to myself, I'll put a couple of $1,000 down. If I do end up, you know, not liking the car, I'll put it subject to finance. And then if I, you know, don't like the car, I won't get the finance for the car. We're in this crossroads at the moment around November, and I've ordered the car. I've still got the M140i. The biggest problem that I then encountered was to afford this car, I was going to have to sell the M140i, and the car market at this stage, when I decided to sell it, was starting to, I guess, slow a little bit. And my car went from being worth about $60,000 to probably low 50s to mid 50s in a really good scenario. I'm thinking to myself, I've got this wait for this new G87 M2, and I've got a car that needs to go. So I did put that car up for sale. I didn't have a lot of interest at around 55,000, and then I managed to get someone. They came in quite low, but I thought rather than hold on to the car and start to stress that when the new M2 gets here, you know, I've got to sell it, I did let that car go. So the car has now gone and has been sold, which is a good thing. It has released the stress of buying the new M2. Now it's just a waiting game. The latest update is that it's on a ship from Mexico to Bremerhaven, and then from Bremerhaven it has its final inspection and then gets sent through to Australia. So very exciting, but the whole process has started from October. It is now a lot later, and we're looking at maybe July, August, hopefully. I've even been told as late as September. The whole process in Australia is a little bit different than overseas. We don't get the tracking that other countries get. So we got to call the dealership, speak to our salesperson, and sort of bother him or her about where the car is at. Fortunately enough, the salesperson at Adelaide BMW has been extremely helpful. Every time I send a message, he does reply. Every time I bother him, he replies. So I've been very fortunate in that regard. It's just in Australia, we get rorted a little bit. There's a lot of people in America and other countries that have already received their cars, already doing reviews. So it's a little bit hard to stand back and watch. Plus, I've now sold the M140i, so I've been without a car for quite some time, which is not a fun scenario for me. If you're a car person, I mean, I've still got the BMW Z3 to drive around in, but it's not quick, can only be driven on nice warm days, and it is on historic rego now. So to not have a fast car in the garage, to not have a car to go to the track in and have some fun and go on a weekend cruise with some friends is getting difficult now. It's a waiting game, and I'm sure the wait will be worth it. So let's get into how I spec'd the car. Now I've gone with the Alpine White. There's a very limited color, as everyone already knows. There's Envelope Blue, a little bit too girlish, a little bit too Hyundai for me. The black is a great color, looks awesome when it's clean. I've got a black BMW Z3, so I know how good black can be, but keeping it maintained, keeping it scratch-free, keeping it swell resistant is just an absolute nightmare, and it's not something that I want to deal with, especially on an expensive car. I'm one of these people where things have to be a little bit too perfect, so when I walk out and I see a little bit of a scratch on it, it's going to stress me out. So black was out. Toronto Red, great color. I don't think red is a color for me on an M2. I think that's more Ferrari for me, but I think the Toronto Red looks awesome. It's just one of those colors where I feel like it's sort of an older person color that, you know, is going to go with it, and it just wasn't for me at the end of the day. And Brooklyn Gray now, that gray is a cool color. Don't think it suits the M2 as much as it should. It definitely looks more like an Audi RS color to me, you know, that sort of chalky gray, but each their own. They're all great colors. It's just extremely disappointing that we only got the choice of 5. The excuses or the reasoning behind it was the factory in Mexico doesn't allow or doesn't have the facilities to have additional colors. So very disappointing. And one of the biggest problems is that because I'm going to have one of the first releases of the car, that's fantastic. I get the car, you know, as soon as, but there's going to be, I know it, I'm going to get the car and it's going to be 6 months, 12 months later, and they're going to start bringing out frozen colors. It's going to be cool colors, but it's one of those things I'm not really willing to wait that long. So let's get into how I spec'd the car. So in Australia, we don't have a hell of a lot of options. The car comes pretty much spec'd out from factory. The only things that we get to choose from is the carbon bucket seats, which I think includes a track day, or they teach you how to drive the car in like a lesson it comes with, and that's it. The rest of the car is fully optional. We get carbon roof from factory, we get heads up display from factory, everything, the headlights, shadow line, everything. There's no choosing, there's no reducing the cost. The RRP is pretty much fixed. So interestingly enough, I thought maybe that BMW might have been a little bit smarter with this. The carbon bucket seats I thought would also include the carbon roof. However, Australia gets carbon roof from factory. You would think that they would make it maybe a sunroof, and then if you got the seats, you get the carbon roof with the seats. The option, I believe, can't remember off the top of my head, I'll change it if it is different, but it was $12,000 option. $12,000 option, and all you actually get is carbon seats. You still can choose the carbon interior even if you don't spec the carbon seats, which is just mind-boggling. I know in other countries such as the US, there's a lot of different options that you can check. I think Canada's a little bit different as well. So they must know their market quite well, I assume. They've basically said, hey, Australia, you'll get the same car. Do you just want the bucket seats or not? So that's the only option. So white with black wheels, and that's pretty much it. So one of the things that has changed greatly is my opinion of the car since I've purchased it. Obviously, we've got all these reviews to go by now. We've got a lot of videos, a lot of pictures to look at, and each and every day, this car seems to be growing on me more and more. I can't wait for it to be sitting in the driveway where that empty spot is. The horsepower rating, I think, you know, BMW is renowned for understating it, and some people have been getting 460 horsepower out the wheel. So that is super exciting to see that, you know, the car has more power than was officially advertised. I think it was 454, which I assumed was at the crank. And some people are running 0 to 100 times as low as 3.8, which is pretty crazy considering this is only a rear wheel driven car. The fact that it's only rear wheel drive is a benefit for me. 4-wheel drive is great. However, you know, when it comes to going around a corner, I'm a bit old school. I do like that rear wheel drive. And although I'm not going to be getting the grip of, you know, xDrive, I think the fun factor will be definitely worth it. So not too disappointed that the car isn't four-wheel drive. But yeah, I just wanted to share that the M140i is gone. There's been no content on it because, well, the car has been gone for a little while now, and I can't wait to receive this new G87 M2, take it to the track, take it roll racing even, and actually use it for what it's meant to be used for. So stay tuned. Hope you enjoyed this video. If there's any questions that you'd like to ask, make sure you ask in the comments below. Also, I'd like to know your opinion on the M2. Ugly? The rear bar, can you handle it? Is it too bad? Is it too much? Anyway, stay tuned. Hope you enjoyed the video, and we will see you in the very, very next video. Peace.